And we're live. Good afternoon, Claire. No, I hope it's afternoon where you're at. It's afternoon where I'm at 2 p.m. And in just talking to you in the green room, Meg, where is that accent from?
So I am from England, Sharon. So hello everybody. Thank you so much for having me. But no, it is now 7 o'clock in the evening here where I am.
All right, all right. And Claire, let me give you an official introduction. You are the brand ambassador of the Paxman, and we're going to be learning today about the Paxman Scalp Cooling System. And I can't wait. I don't want to waste a lot of time talking because I know you have a story to tell, and I know we're going to be joined shortly by some folks with some questions. But why don't you tell us how did the Paxman Cooling, scalp cooling system came about?
Of course, it's been my absolute pleasure and thank you. So it's no coincidence that my surname is the same name as the business. We don't make everyone change it. But so the Paxman business started out because of personal experience. And that was all down to our original pioneer, a wonderful lady called Sue Paxman, who also happens to be my beautiful mum. And she was sadly diagnosed with breast cancer, age 36, back in the 90s. Now, the method of cold cap treatment, scalp cooling, has been around in Europe for a very, very long time. Even in the 70s, they used to put tourniquets on people's heads and other methods of ice packs. So scalp cooling was available when my mum was going through treatment, but it was a very archaic, primitive form and method that wasn't very well accepted and didn't work very well. So it was very cumbersome, very labor intensive for the nursing staff, and also really incredibly uncomfortable as well. But my mum wanted to try it. Her hair was just like mine. So she said, yeah, let's give it a go. As I said, unfortunately, it didn't work for her. And you know what, Sharon, that was the first time that she actually cried, when her beautiful blonde curly hair started to fall out. And I was only 14 at the time. And I actually stood in the bathroom and cut all of her beautiful hair off for her.
Wow.
Stood behind her, and with those orange-handed scissors from the kitchen, I cut it all off. And you know what? That's probably one of the worst things that I've ever had to do.
Yes.
So at the same time as this was happening, and her experiencing the hair loss and the traumas associated with it, my dad, Glenn, who is our chairman and founder, already a successful businessman and entrepreneur, actually asked the question and said, what is this cold cap treatment? What is this scalp cooling, and why hasn't it worked for Sue? So when he got to understand that what they're trying to do is reduce the scalp temperature, but maintain it at that temperature in order to protect the hair follicles from the adjuvant effects of the chemo, and which all the other methods weren't doing effectively. That is what I always call it, his light bulb moment. If it was a cartoon character, it would have gone bing. Because if you like, as a stroke of luck, as a family, we have over 80 years of refrigeration experience. So we've been cooling liquids in the drink dispense industry for a long, long time. So knowing and understanding that technology and that technique, but more importantly, seeing how utterly distressed that my mum was, that's his absolute driver to develop something and to make something that worked. So with the help of his brother, my uncle Neil, they set about developing the Paxman system. So we got initial medical device approval in 1997. So we've been doing this quite a long time.
That's awesome.
But it's absolutely is a labor of love. Sadly, my mum's cancer, after being in remission, returned. And she was just utterly amazing all the way through her treatment. But sadly, the cancer took her in October of 2000, aged only 44. And that's how old I am now, Sharon. So
Wow.
I sort of really feel it now in terms of when that realization. But do you know what? she didn't die in vain. She absolutely didn't die in vain. Her legacy lives on. Every single system that we dispatch all over the world, every single person that gets access to Paxman is her legacy. And we hope that people understand that, you know, you are in good hands, because you absolutely are in the hands of my mum. And that's why, you know, we genuinely do care. We've had that personal life experience, and we're here to help.
Well, Claire, thank you for sharing such a personal and gripping story. I was on your website and I saw the picture of your beautiful mom. So I know that must have been quite impactful. And like you said, you know, when you say you're now 44, you're the age when when your mom left us. So
Yeah.
you know how many more years ahead that she could have lived. And, you know, but like you said, you know, her life, her legacy lives on through the work that you guys do. And you mentioned something about your hair type. And I was wondering, does it matter, or did it matter back then what your hair type was in terms of how to use the system? Was a system more effective on certain hair, or maybe the previous system or the more archaic system? Was it more effective on certain hair types? Because you mentioned hair type, and I was wondering exactly how the system worked.
Yeah. So in terms of the effectiveness is actually more down to the drug that somebody is having, as opposed to the hair type. Now, there are different things that we can do in terms of preparing the hair effectively in order, in order for people to get the best outcomes. So if I kind of explain how scalp cooling, how cold cap treatment works, then that can sort of help to understand. So the reason that you lose your hair when you're having chemotherapy is because your hair follicle is it's a rapidly dividing cell. So it's constantly growing, constantly active. Now, a cancerous tumor is also a rapidly dividing cell. So when you're given chemotherapy, the chemotherapy is designed to target rapidly dividing cells. The problem is it cannot differentiate between a nice healthy cell and a nasty cancerous cell. So it attacks them all. So basically it will attack those cells in the hair follicle and cause total apoptosis, which is basically when that hair cell and the whole shaft dies, and subsequently you lose your hair. So what we are doing when you have scalp cooling, effectively, we're trying to protect those hair follicles against the effects of the chemotherapy.
Gotcha.
And that's by cooling the scalp. And there's a number of different biological mechanisms that occur when you cool the scalp. So we're taking the scalp down to a temperature of around 64 to 72 degrees. I have to get my Fahrenheit head on then and not my Celsius. And effectively, so we're not freezing the scalp. That's a common misconception. But we need to take it down to that temperature, and that's when a number of these mechanisms occur. So first of all, and the one that's been commonly known about and trying to achieve in the past, is vasoconstriction. So by cooling the scalp, you're narrowing those blood vessels which carry the blood and the chemo to the hair follicle. You're reducing it by 20 to 40%. Okay, so that means less chemotherapeutic drug gets to those hair follicles.
Gotcha.
Then there's a number of other different mechanisms that occur. So we know that obviously I've just mentioned about the cells being rapidly dividing cells. If you actually cool them to those temperature, that means then that the cells slow down. They stop rapidly dividing, and therefore that means that the chemotherapy bypasses them.
Gotcha.
We've also been able to find as well that the way that the chemo enters into that into that cell as such, again, when you cool it, it gets like a bouncer. It's like, you're not coming in here. I'm sorry, you're not coming in here. It protects itself. So not only is it the cells, but it protects itself and that barrier of how it gets through. And then we also know that the chemo itself, the toxicity of it is lessened just in that localized area. So it's a number of different biological mechanisms that are, are actually occurring. So the bit about the hair type, so what we have to do is, and how Paxman works, is we have a small, compact, mobile refrigeration unit which sits next to you in your infusion chair. It's about the size of a bedside table, and that's got a special liquid coolant in it. Then people going through the treatment will wear a soft silicone cap
While they're getting the chemo?
while they're getting the chemo.
Gotcha. Okay.
30 minutes or 45 minutes, depending on the thickness of your hair, before treatment. You continue to wear it during your infusion, and then you continue to wear it after your infusion for a maximum of 90 minutes, so that we can ensure that we're cooling that scalp effectively whilst the chemotherapy, before to prepare it, and during and whilst the chemotherapy is most active in your actual in your body. Okay, so we have to make sure that cap is in close contact to the scalp. So there's a number of different methods that we do in terms of depending on your hair type.
Yeah.
So that's what we were alluding to before about
Right.
that everyone gets the best possible outcomes that they can.
Right. And I'm going to come back to that hair type thing, because we were talking about that. I thought it was so interesting. When you mentioned the hair type, like you have curly hair, there are people with straight hair. And of course, I have what they call type 4 hair. So we'll come back to that, because there's some great questions here that I want to ask from our audience. So I'm wondering, could you briefly describe the science behind it? And also, does it work better with one type of chemo versus another? So you kind of talked a little bit about the science, but Peter is a scientist. So, so he wanted to know, does it work better with one type of chemo versus another?
Okay, so it does with all of our clinical data that we have. We do see better results with taxanes. So we see anything from 70 to 80% plus with taxanes. And what we mean by a success, and with the clinical data, is patients are expected to, or people are expected to lose at least 50% of their hair when they're having scalp cooling treatment. We don't claim, and we don't expect to retain it all. But the difference is, if you don't scalp cool, you lose all your hair, versus if you do scalp cool, you're expected to retain at least 50% or more.
Claire, can I ask you something about that? The hair that you retain,
yes,
is it strong? Is it like would it be like your normal feeling here? Is it weak?
Yeah, no. So what we do is, as long as you follow our hair care guidance during your treatment, then it should be absolutely fine. In fact, we've had people report that when they've gone to the hairdressers post-treatment, the hairdressers reported that, do you know what, your hair is in much better condition. There could be certain things with that, because there's less washing. We recommend it's washed less, that it's cared for better, making sure that you brush it. So there's lots of different factors. So yeah, some people find that it changes a little bit, might be obviously a lot thinner in its appearance, but and what's also important to understand is that, as we say, it's 50% or more, but the success is very subjective to individuals as well. Right. You might have somebody who's only kept 30% of the hair, and this is exactly what we see all the time. And actually they're over the moon because they still have some hair.
Right, to work with.
Absolutely. Yeah. So then going on to the anthracyclines, that yes, we do see less effectiveness of treatment. However, one of the biggest things for us is that we've recently been able to prove through clinical data that if you scalp cool, your hair will grow back thicker and faster and stronger within a 12-week period. So that means even carrying on. So what that looks at then is it's the benefits beyond hair retention. So for people, okay, they might lose, 80%, 90% of their hair whilst they're going through treatment. But by continuing to scalp cool, and that being your primary driver, then you're going to get back to some sort of normalcy much quicker, because instead of it being 12 months down the line and you've got hair this long, 6 months down the line, you can have hair like this long. And that's a key differentiator and a really big driver for people to be offered it even on anthracyclines, but also for them to be offered it full stop.
I think that's a wonderful benefit, and that's something I think. I don't know. You're the branding ambassador, but I think that's such a key benefit to say up front. Like even if you lose 80% of your hair, the comparison of of the grow back period, which everyone is looking forward to, is going to
Yeah,
be so much more quicker, so much more accelerated. So I think that's a key point. Um,
absolutely.
the next question: how do we make sure that these cooling caps are available to every woman?
Oh gosh, Alana, that's a great question, and something that we are really passionate about at Paxman. We want to make sure that this is synonymous with side effect management, that everybody is offered it, and that it's affordable for everybody as well. So Paxman has been out of pocket for people going through treatment for the last 5-6 years, but we were absolutely delighted that towards the back end of last year, the AMA actually announced that it's now been given and granted CPT coding. So and this is for Medicare, Medicaid to start out with.
Awesome.
So what we're currently doing and working on, we have there's over 500 facilities in the US now that have Paxman. We know we've got a long way to go, but we're working hard. And what we're concentrating on now is moving our facilities over to what we call our buy and bill model, which again makes it much more accessible. For those that aren't yet, and for where Paxman is available and it's still out of pocket, there is lots of wonderful subsidiaries, in particular one called Hair to Stay. If you go onto hairtostay.org, they provide subsidiary funds to help for people to be able to afford scalp cooling. But yeah, it's about, Alana, it's about awareness. It's about patient advocacy.
Yes.
People going and asking and demanding for them to have this treatment available, whether it be ours or whether it's one of our competitors. But, so to make sure that every facility has this for people, because, we understand it's so important. And it's important for men as well. Men, it's in their top 3 most feared side effects.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we wanted you to be on the show, because we wanted to help get the word out, because we think it's such an amazing product. And you and I were talking about before we came on live, about how you were trying to, you guys are very cognizant of the diversity, of the inclusion aspects, where you're trying to get this to her point, to Ilana's point, that you're trying to make sure that everyone has it, every race. And something you said that was interesting to me was about the hair. Because you said that you guys realized that in the beginning it was more suitable for a certain hair type.
Well, I think that's what we were portraying, Sharon, if I'm honest. We took a good, hard, long look at ourselves and realized, this isn't just about the white blonde woman having this treatment. Then we also realized that, in terms of our outward appearance, but then the biggest thing for us was about the hair preparation procedure, and there being this incorrect and understanding that actually scalp cooling or cool cap treatment won't work for women of color, because again, it's the fact that we were being misleading and misguiding in our hair preparation protocols. So if you like, what we have to do is ensure that the hair is as flat as possible, so that the cap itself has as much direct contact on that scalp in order to help with that temperature. We also need to be able to use water for heat transference, to aid the heat transference, for conductivity. And then we need to use conditioner to help remove that cap after use. Now, we used to just say, spritz your hair with water and put conditioner on it, push it back. And that's fine if you've got type 1 and 2 hair. But if you've got type 3, but more so type 4, then that absolutely is not going to work, because of obviously the high porosity of the hair, the fact that water doesn't work. It actually makes it even curlier. So all of this advice we were giving was counteractive to what we were trying to achieve. So we went away, we did the work, we looked, and now we have specific, not just hair care guides, but actual hair preparation protocols for people with type 3 and 4 hair, in order to help them and make sure that they achieve all those requirements in order to get the best possible outcomes. Anecdotally, we've seen some great results. We're working with the Montefiore Einstein Hospital in Brooklyn, and they are currently running one of the first proper trials with women of color and Latino women with this hair type, and are utilizing this hair preparation protocol as well. We're delighted to partner with them in getting some real, honest, real-time data, so that, again, we can make sure it's accessible for everyone, no matter what your hair type is or your ethnicity.
I appreciate that. I can appreciate that. And for those of you who are watching, and Claire's talking about type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4 hair. So I am type 4 hair, which means that my hair is really tight. Claire, you're what, type 2 or 3?
I'm type 3. Yeah, I'm type 3.
Claire's type 3, so she's one type under me. I'm type 4, which my hair is curly, but the curls are tighter. And so, as she said, the cooling cap, for it to actually penetrate my scalp, would need a little bit more work. And that's what you're working on. And Claire and I also discussed that, we're talking about, disparities in care. That's not a malicious thing. We just know it just requires education. And that's why the Cancer Equity Project is all about bringing the education to clinicians, to healthcare providers, that, okay, what works for that type 1 here may not work for this type 4 here. Educate, not to make anyone feel bad, is just to make you aware that there are differences, not maliciously intended to discriminate, but we have to look at how we practice medicine and how we practice these treatments. So I love that. We have a lot of questions, Claire. So,
really?
Aileen says, does this treatment impact any of the other side effects of chemo, like nausea or vomiting?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't impact them. What people do report, so if you like, that first 10 to 15 minutes can be a little bit uncomfortable. Everybody's very different in the tolerance, but less than 5% of people stop due to it being painful and uncomfortable, because it's transient. It goes away. It's like if you jump in a freezing cold sea, or you go into the plunge pool at the spa. It's at first it's really cold, but you do get used to it. Key thing is to ensure you're protecting the forehead. So what we find, if people aren't protecting the forehead and ensuring that the cap is not in direct contact with the skin, that can make people feel a little bit nauseous. So just ensuring that people follow the guidelines and the protocols, then it should, people generally find it after that 10 to 15 minutes, they find it okay. But no, it doesn't impact on any of the other effects.
Okay, I have another question. We know that things we might consider cosmetic in cancer, such as breast reconstructive surgery, are covered by insurance and our Medicare. Can you tell us what type of coverage patients can expect for this therapy? And I think you mentioned that you got an approval for insurance for Medicare and Medicaid, which is amazing. Because as you well know, Claire, it's usually people who are living at or below the federal poverty guidelines that need these services, can't afford them. So that is a big plus. And I'm just wondering, based on Rakita's question, I'm just wondering, how are you guys getting the word out there to like these community doctors and stuff? Like, all right, hey, you can offer this or this service to your patients who are on Medicare and Medicaid.
Yeah. So again, as I mentioned, this is a big drive for us this year. As I said, we're in over 500 facilities in the US, and some of those are the community hospitals within those areas. So we're working with them currently in potentially and hopefully changing them over to. When we say changing over, I know that probably doesn't sound like, what do you mean change it over? But we obviously how it processes with the caps, etc., is changing them over to what we call our buy and bill model, so that we can ensure that people are everybody, and with the Medicare, Medicaid are actually getting access to this. We're also trying to shout about it as much as we can. So again, thank you for the opportunity. So again, it's about that patient advocacy. The more people that know you can go to your facility that perhaps they don't offer it, they can open the door and put in touch with us, and we'd be absolutely more than happy to bring them on so that people can get access.
So if, let's say I'm a patient and I'm, I have to go through chemotherapy, and I've heard about, the cooling cap on this show or somewhere else that you're advertising, I can then go to my doctor and say, hey, how can we get this? How can you get me hooked up with this cooling cap? And then it's up to them to reach out to you guys.
Yeah.
Figure
absolutely.
out how.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is why an educated patient, I tell you, makes such a difference with the outcome. And, it's one of the reasons, as I'm thinking about our Compass Journey Map, one of the initiatives that we're doing for the Cancer Equity Project is this journey map where we can, like when your mom, when she got diagnosed at that early age, what were her options? What was going to be her pathway? And one of the things we put on this pathway is, on our map, is your cooling cap. So we'll have to talk about it a little bit, like, hey, if you're going through a chemo, this is a resource. This is something that you can ask about. That's what our navigator, our journey map will do, will help patients become educated about what is out there for them, no matter what stage of the journey they're on. So that is
that. Absolutely love that.
Yes, we'll definitely get in touch with you with that piece. And another question. We'll take a couple more. Seems like this might be a kind of distraction from some of the other unpleasant effects of getting chemo. Do you find that patients report that?
That's a really good question again. Yeah, absolutely it can be, and it can be a distraction from the whole thing as well. Or some people actually find it the other side. It's it's something a bit that they have to get used to. Obviously, it extends the treatment time, but I think that people's drivers, because of what they're potentially getting out of it, whether that's during treatment or whether that's after, I think you can absolutely say that that's a distraction. But it's what it gives to that individual. I think one of the previous questions was talking about the fact that other cosmetic treatments, do the air quotes or bunny ears, whichever you say, but actually a lot of the work that's being done in this is it's not cosmetic. It's actually much more deep rooted than that, in terms of it's psychological.
Yes.
Believe it or not, Sharon, there is a statistic that 8% of people will refuse or request a less efficacious treatment in order to retain the hair. That itself just shows how much it means to people. It strips them of the privacy. It heightens family worries, especially with young children. It's that normalcy I said about before as well. It's people just want to live with their cancer diagnosis, be able to go to work, go for a drink with friends, go and do the school run, all of these little things that actually you really struggle to do. So these are the key pointers and the drivers as to why it's so important. And we've seen it's changing, and that shift of understanding that absolutely this is not a cosmetic treatment. This is not about anything like that. It's to do with the psychological impact.
Yes. Someone just said that in the feed. Getting your hair back is such an important part of recovery of cancer treatment, and you just said psychological impact. It's so true. As you said, 8% of people would rather have less effective, chemo, just so they don't lose their hair.
That's huge.
Right. It is huge, because what do we see on TV? The stereotype: someone with a bald head, and then instantly everyone around you feels sick. Everyone around you feel ill. Everyone around you feel it brings up certain emotions, almost like death, And so
with children associate a bald head with death. Absolutely.
Yes. Wow. Well, in our closing minute or so, Claire, I want to leave you with anything that you want to say to our audience. We really appreciate you coming on, and we appreciate the work that you guys are doing and the hope that it's giving to people. And gosh, what's your goal? You said there's about 500 centers right now?
Yeah, so we have over 500 centres have our equipment. We've got nearly 1,000 machines over there with you guys, but we're actually also distributing to 65 countries worldwide. Here in the UK, we've got over 98% of our public and private hospitals have our equipment. But our dream and our goal, there's a couple of things. We want to improve the efficacy. So a couple of years ago, we've been working with our local university for the last 8 years, and we invested a large amount of money into the university, and we actually opened the world's first scalp cooling research and innovation centre. So we're cultivating real life hair follicles. That's how we've been able to understand exactly what those biological mechanisms and what's happening when we're cooling the scalp and protecting them from the chemo. So what we want to do is we're working on developing a topical agent which we can use in conjunction with the cold cap so that it enhances the effectiveness. Some people are natural hotheads. You don't get the right temperatures, but instead of it being 50-50, whatever drug, we want to be up at 80%, at least a minimum, across all of the boards of chemotherapy. And also, as I mentioned, we want to democratize scalp cooling. We want to make sure, and we're working so hard on this, that no matter who you are, where you are in the world, your financial situation, your ethnicity, your cancer diagnosis, that you get access to Paxman and you get access to scalp cooling.
That's a fitting end. Claire, thank you once again. And thank you again for your support of Total Health. And we look forward to even having you again to talk a little bit more down the line on where you're at with the cap. You're a delightful guest. I learned a lot. I know our audience learned a lot, and they'll be on the replay as well. So
wonderful.
We will make sure that we post your website in the comments just so that we can find you. Thank you so much. Someone just who came on late said, I guess we have some folks who are chiming in now. Fantastic. Let's click it up here. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. This was very well needed. This is a real plus for those who are going through that, to know that this resource is there, this opportunity is there for them to, like you said, for me, a big takeaway was, okay, rather than waiting a year for my hair to come back, I could probably get it back in 6 months here. I mean, that's really incredible. So thank you so much, Claire. And
pleasure.
Next time.